Today, we're going to break down a really powerful set of tools that were developed in one of the most violent places you can imagine, and we're going to see how we can actually use them in our own lives. This is your practical guide to the Alternatives to Violence Project, or AVP for short. So here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with AVP's pretty incredible origin story, then dive into its core belief, this idea of transforming power. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty communication basics, see how it's all taught, look at the real-world impact, both the numbers and the stories, and finally, we'll talk about how you can start using these ideas yourself. All right, so how does a global peace movement even get started? Well, you might be surprised to hear it wasn't in some quiet boardroom. Nope, this one was born from the chaos and violence of a prison riot. Just take a second and think about it. When someone confronts you, what's your first gut reaction? For most of us, it's one of two things, right? Fight or flight. But AVP was created to find that third option. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1975. The super violent Attica prison riots are still a fresh, very raw memory. The tension inside New York's prisons is just palpable, and everyone knows they desperately need a new way to handle conflict. And this is where the story gets really interesting. A group of long-term inmates who were just tired of seeing young people get stuck in this endless cycle of violence, they reached out to local Quakers for help. And together, they built a program from the ground up. The goal was simple, but kind of radical. Teach people practical skills to handle conflict peacefully. And the key part, it was an initiative for inmates, run by inmates. Now, this whole thing wasn't just about a few clever techniques. It was built on a really deep belief about what people are capable of. So let's get into the core idea that powers this entire method. They gave it a name, transforming power. It's this core belief that deep down, inside every single person, there's a good and powerful force. A force that can take a situation that's about to explode with hostility and actually steer it toward cooperation. It's not about winning, it's about changing the whole game. So how do you visualize an idea like that? Well, AVP uses this. It's called the mandala. You can think of it like a map. Right there in the center, that's the goal, transforming power. And all the layers around it, those are the paths that show us how to get there. And these are the keys to unlocking it. It all has to start with respect for yourself and caring for others. From there, it's about going into a situation expecting the best from people, forcing yourself to take that crucial pause to think before you react, and finally, having the courage to actively ask for a nonviolent solution. Each one is a step you can actually take. Okay, so that's the big philosophy, but how do you actually do it? Let's dive into the how-to part of this guide. What are the actual skills they teach in these AVP workshops? It really comes down to these 4 building blocks. Every workshop focuses on building up skills in these areas: affirmation, communication, cooperation, and then the final goal, creative conflict resolution. So let's take them one by one. The first step, and honestly it might be the most important, is affirmation. The whole idea here is that you just can't solve problems in a negative space. You have to start by building a foundation of trust, by recognizing the good and the value in everyone you're dealing with, and that includes yourself. And this quote just nails why affirmation has to come first. I mean, think about it. Before you can even start to talk through a problem, people have to feel like they're worthy of being heard. Without that basic dignity, the door to real communication just stays slammed shut. So once you've got that foundation of respect, then you can move on to communication. And this is a total two-way street. It's about learning how to actually listen, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but listening to understand. And on the other side, it's about learning how to express what you need clearly and confidently, but without being aggressive. This quote from someone who went through a workshop just says it all, doesn't it? That simple mental shift from immediately questioning what someone says to just letting them say it and hearing it. That can change everything. It's such a small tweak in your approach, but it can lead to a huge change in the result. So how do you even teach these skills? The founders of AVP knew one thing for sure. When you're in a heated argument, all that stuff you read in a book just flies right out the window. So they built a program that's all about practice, practice, practice. This is so important. AVP is not a lecture. It's an intense 18 to 20-hour workshop where you learn by doing, through games, group discussions, and a lot of role-playing. The whole point is to create a safe space where you can practice new, nonviolent responses over and over so that when a real conflict pops up, that new behavior is what comes out, not the old fight or flight instinct. Okay, This all sounds really good in theory, right? But does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's look at the proof, both in the hard data and in the words of the people who've actually been through it. Listen to this. This is the starting point for a lot of people. This person is describing a life that's just completely soaked in negativity, a world where every single interaction is a potential fight. This is the exact mindset that AVP is trying to flip. And the data shows that this transformation is very, very real. A 3-year study out of Delaware is pretty jaw-dropping. See that blue line? That's the inmates who took the AVP workshops. After 3 years, their rate of going back to prison was almost 24 percentage points lower than the other group. That's not a small difference. That is a life-changing impact. And here's the human story behind those numbers. This is the same person who felt like they were negativity. Now, they're talking about seeing the world through a whole new lens. This shows it's not just about stopping fights. It's about fundamentally rewiring your whole perspective on life. It's a total shift from a negative world to a positive one. So here's the thing. The principles that made such a huge difference inside a prison, they're universal. They apply to all of us. So let's bring this all back home and talk about how we can start using these ideas. Here are just a few key takeaways from AVP that you can literally start applying today. First, instead of trying to win an argument, look for common ground. Second, before you even think about what you're going to say next, just listen. Listen to understand their side. Third, be clear and courageous about your own position. And finally, in every conversation, try to build a little pocket of community based on honesty and respect. These aren't just some nice-sounding ideals. They're actual practical tools. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What's the next opportunity you have to choose that third way? Not fight, not flight, but transformation. Whether it's a tiny frustration at work or a big blow-up at home, when will you try it?